Welcome back, guys. Today we are going to summarize the full car wash job. I'm not fully done yet, but it's enough to make a first video. So if you guys follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you might have seen this initial video. I only took it vertically, so if it's a little distorted, that's why. But this was taking down all the metal halide that was in this place and changing it over to LED to save this customer some money. Because if you've seen in my other videos, metal halide and fluorescent bulbs take up so much energy and waste so much money. But onto this day, so after changing out those metal halides, we changed out all the outdoor lighting. I'm gonna show you at the end of the video, but I wanted to start the video off with this because of the quality of the video, and I took this video specifically for YouTube. So we're gonna go over how I changed over off of these GE breakers onto a timer. So that way the lights outside would work on a timer because the customer doesn't want them on 24/7, and I agree, it wastes money. So let's get into it. I had to order about 2 other 2-pole 30s and 2 single-pole 20s for this panel board. This GE panel board is not made anymore, and the breakers are a pain in the ass to come by. They're TED breakers, so I had to order them off of like some off-brand website or whatever. They're like 3 weeks out, super annoying. So the other components of this job are kind of waiting on these breakers, but at least I get to show you guys the panel board now. These panel covers are super heavy, and eventually we're actually going to have to order new slots for the panel board covers because we're going to have to add more circuits in here. The customer is interested in getting another 400 amp service outside so that way we can power some higher end vacuums, and so we're working with the utility company now to do that. But if that's the case, we're going to have to fill this panel up. But for now, we're going to install this timer because the customer does not need these lights on 24/7. So these are the 2 breakers that we have. They're double tapped, and these lights that are outside are 208. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill through this panel board with the unibit twice, one going into the timer and one coming out of the timer, because code says that you cannot have line and load going through the same piece of pipe. So we're going to make sure that we're being code compliant here. My unibit was not working. This panel board is really thick. For this particular application, we are going to be using 1/2-inch Carflex and 1/2-inch Carflex connectors and run THHN to and from this timer. The entire outside of this building is concrete block, so we need to pre-drill and use tap guns to mount basically everything, which is better because it's more likely to stay mounted. However, it is a pain in the ass. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm getting ready to mount this timer. I use a specific timer, and I'll show you guys what it is once I get a little bit closer. But the reason I do use this timer is because it's really easy to take the guts out and mount it without hurting any of the inside components. Also, just a side note, if you guys hear any loud noises, it's because this car wash is literally still in use. They're using the self-service washes, and they are still making money. So I make sure I slammed both of these breakers off, and I disconnected the initial wiring from them to basically splice them together and put some new wire connected to them. At this point, I had already dry fitted the Carflex onto the timer, so that way I can just cut whatever I don't need off and slip it through. I usually dry fit first and then connect before I actually push any wire through because I don't want to waste anything. So it's a little bit easier to push a snake through and have an exact measurement afterwards of how much wire you need. Putting on the last connector is definitely a pain in the ass in this area because there's a lot of tubing and stuff from other things that are going through this car wash that are in my way. You guys are gonna see me use 2 different types of fish tapes in this video, a Milwaukee one and a Klein one. And the only reason is because sometimes one of them gets buried deep in my van. So this is the Milwaukee one that they sent me. going in, we're going to do one ground because we have to ground the equipment. And then we're going to do one leg and then the other leg. Just like that. It's really important that you make the head of the wire really tight and tape it really well. Otherwise, you're going to have issues, especially going in through 1/2 inch anything. And any type of connectors or 90s is just going to be a pain in the ass. So you want to just make sure that you have it tied off properly, or you're probably going to lose it halfway through the run. I'm sweating so bad. First one went through pretty easily. This one's going to be a little bit easier because we actually only have to run 2 wires through this one. The other one, you had to ground the equipment. Now for this run, we only have to do both legs coming out. Second one went through even easier, and so now once I get this wire fully through enough so that way I can hook it up in the panel, I am going to show you guys basically the inside of the timer and how I hook it up. This is the timer that I use most of the time. Well, the brand for the most part is Torque. I use these ones and I also use the digital ones. The digital ones sometimes act up though, so I like the manual ones, but they are really nice because they give you the manual with the different application settings. So you have the option for 120, 208 here, and you get another timer and they have 277. So they give you like the whole setup. And so as you can see, I put the line side on the first two, and then on the second screw where the second line is, it also requires a jumper onto the third screw. And that is just how they make it hook up for 208. And the application is obviously different for 120. And then the last 2 screws are going to be your load side of the screws. And this is a really easy application. And then the top, you can see that you have to set the little analog things, the little metal pieces, for the times that you want it on and off. And they come with little things that say on and off, and they'll basically rotate back and forth through that. So now that that's hooked up, I'm going to splice on the line side. I'm going to hook up all of the wires to the existing load, and then I'm also going to hook up to the existing line into those breakers. Back and forth to each other.
Yep. I just did the shittiest part.
I had my brother with me for most of the days on this job. He's like one of the only people that I work with, but he did the disconnect for the split unit, and he also installed a few more lights for me and did a few more things around the car wash.
No, I literally gave you my whole Teflon bit.
You left it at a job and I grabbed it and it's been sitting in my grandson.
Well, regardless, is what I'm still.
Alright, so after splicing on the load side, now all that's left is to splice these that are on the line side of the timer into the new breakers, so that way they will basically go from the breaker to the timer will switch on, and then they'll go to the lights, which is exactly what we needed.
And she picked an Asian spot instead.
And I was like, she's like, what do you think we were doing? I'm like, I thought we were doing cars. She's like, oh. Yep, this film is definitely bad.
And last but not least of this process is adding the straps to the Carflex, so that way the Carflex cannot move around. And that's it. The timer is installed and ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
This panel cover is a struggle, and I actually missed the part where I almost dropped it on myself because I was out of frame, so unfortunately you guys missed that. But this panel cover is a pain in the ass because it's a bunch of little pieces that are connected together by little bolts, and they still move around even though they're connected. The last thing that I had to do while my brother behind me, as you can see him in through the window, is putting up the last 2 LED lights in this new area of the wash bay. I had to drill a hole so that way we can go from the wash bay all the way in, so that way we can draw some power for automatic doors for the tunnel. And so I'm using my hammer drill from Milwaukee. I freaking love this thing, but it is super heavy. So I'm on the ladder and I just couldn't get enough leverage to push forward. I was going good for a minute, but it was a struggle. So I brought the ladder back down. By the way, this little giant ladder is the shit. I'm gonna link it in my Amazon. You guys can go check it out if you want. The link will be below, because this ladder has so many different options, and I'm gonna also do a small video on it so you can see all the options. But putting the ladder down like this gave me a lot more leverage, so that way I could finish drilling this hole.
Go put that light in right now for our fucking visit.
Okay, can you grab this? Maybe?
You done?
Right now.
My brother wired this light and everything, but could not get the little screw inside to actually hold the light together, so of course I had to finish it. This is basically the last thing that we did this day. The car wash closed, so we'll be back later. But I'm gonna now show you all of the other things that I've been doing throughout this job, but take into consideration that these were on Instagram and TikTok, so they're not the right resolution, but they're still good to watch. So this day, I was taking these wires out of the relay board for a washer and dryer machine and putting them into this panel here. Again, I'm waiting for a 2-pole 30 for the dryer and a single pole 20 for the washer machine, but we need to get them off the relay board because that relay board is getting removed and they are putting in something else. These are the junction boxes that were upstairs. They were already a mess. Don't come for me. They were already a shit show. I'm just trying to do the best with what I had. But as you can see, I got the wires down, got them in the panel, and they just have to sit there until I can get some breakers for that shit, because that's what we're waiting on. There were some spare breakers, but they're 70 amps, 3-phase, so we're gonna wait for that. But then these are the outside lights that I actually were putting on the timer that you guys saw. They are all outside wall packs. This specific light was actually the first one I put up, and I also missed and didn't get a video of how I completely dropped the glass off of this one and it shattered and I was like 20 feet in the air. It's totally not convenient for these lights to be this high up in the air, but it was what was existing and the customer did not want to pay to drop them any lower. So instead I got a higher lumen size so that way they can properly distribute the light all over the parking lot nicely. There were 12 lights in total, and this actually took me a longer time than I expected because the first 2 tricked me and went right into wood just because of the outside of the building for the first 2. Every other one I had to drill into concrete block and use Tapcons, and the blocks were all uneven everywhere, so the light wasn't sitting, it wasn't being level. It was just literally such a pain in the ass, and each one was custom. But like I said, this was like its own specific day and I got most of that done. And while I was doing that, my brother was inside dropping camera lines. And so this is one of the last days that I have recorded. We are coming back, but I wanted to get as much done in this video as I possibly could show you guys, so you guys had like an overall summary and you had a full idea of the job. But so in this hallway, I ordered little 2x2 flush mount square LEDs. And this day, the beginning of it was cutting everything out with my drill and my hole saw and using this bubble cover. I'm gonna link the bubble cover below too because this thing has helped me so much, and I got it on Amazon and it's so cheap and literally amazing. So I had to cut all of these out, individually mount them, put all new blue old work boxes in because there were no existing blue boxes. And so this was pretty time consuming and it probably took me until 10 o'clock to do. And then I added some new wiring into this panel for the split unit that I said that my brother wired. I had to put the wire that he brought to the split unit into a junction box and then from there drop THHN down into this panel board. And I did a few other things. I had to do heaters. They had us install about 5 heaters that were only 15 amp heaters, and they don't draw anything, but I had to basically pull circuits for the igniters to light because they were propane heaters. But so this is also, just so you know, this was the Klein Tools snake that I use, the fish tape. This one I like a little bit more just because I like the flexibility of it. But like I said, this is like a pain in the ass. I didn't have the right THHN for this because I actually needed 10 wire and I only had 12 wire on my truck. So a lot of these I had to label and phase tape with green and white and black, and I just wasn't prepared to do this, but I finished the other parts of the job early, so I wanted to get done as much as I possibly could. And I put the panel cover on, which you guys know is a pain in the ass. But like I said, I'm also waiting on a single pole breaker for the propane heaters, and I'm waiting on another 2-pole 30 for the split unit that I installed. So I'm just kind of safing off the wires. I did put in the ground and neutrals on the ground and neutral bars, but I didn't get anywhere further than that because, like I said, I'm waiting for breakers. I'm basically useless without the breakers right now. This is the entirety of that job and everything that I've done so far. I will be back to install those breakers, as I said before, and we do have to do a few more things before that outdoor 400 amp service comes in. When that does get approved by the utility company, we have to order a NEMA 3 panel. It's going to be huge. So stay tuned, guys, and thanks for watching.